This one time, there was a family. They were part of the elite upper class, so they decided to have a baby. All of their friends had adorable babies, and they wanted their baby to be the cutest one of all. Unfortunately, they ended up having a very, very, very ugly baby, which they decided to name Dill. They tried to be proud of the child, but he was hideous compared to the other children. On top of everything, he had a beard. Their friends were very competitive and judgmental, and Dill was an embarrassment. After a week of getting strange looks, they decided the only thing to do was to get rid of him. They didn't want anyone to know that this was their ugly baby, so trying to put it up for adoption was completely out of the question. Instead, they drove to the last place anyone would look for their baby, the Detroit River. This is the perfect spot, they thought. They carried their ugly child onto a bridge over the river and threw him in without a second thought. They walked away from the child without looking back once.
Luckily, Dill just happened to fall near a group of confused Atlantic salmon, who were in for the summer on vacation. There were many kayaks surrounding him, and he was in danger of getting hit. The salmon decided to take pity on the weird thing floating at the surface, and decided to raise him as their own. The salmon renamed the child Oepidus. For years, Oepidus lived in the river with the friendly fish and learned their ways. He became adapted to the freezing conditions and eventually grew his own pair of fins. Not long after Oepidus turned 18, the fish knew it was time to leave the river. They realized that their group was dying out and they had a longing for open water. After teaching Oepidus basic survival skills and how to walk, the fish left Oepidus abandoned once again on the shore of the Detroit River. Oepidus did not want to live in the river alone, so he began to wander towards Detroit. He had often looked upon the city with curiosity and amazement, and he decided that now was a good time to explore it. As he walked toward the city, he saw a billboard high above his head. It was an advertisement for the Detroit Receiving Hospital. The sign had several beautiful women on it and said, "We have pretty nurses." Oepidus knew that this was where he wanted to go. He walked until he saw an ambulance. He had seen these driving towards hospitals before and followed it.
He finally ended up at the Detroit Receiving Hospital. He eagerly looked around but saw no pretty nurses. He walked around the entire hospital but only saw one nurse, and she was not pretty at all. As he was walking, he stepped on something crunchy. Looking down, he saw a broken cookie with a piece of paper in it. He ate the cookie and read the piece of paper. The piece of paper said, "Impending son-inflicted death upon your male elder will precede sinful matrimony tween the one and the one has birthed." In other words, you'll kill your father and marry your mother. Oepidus was furious and severely disappointed. He grabbed his baseball bat and attacked the old man lying in a hospital bed near him. After the man was dead, Oepidus saw a pretty nurse walk by. She saw what Oepidus had done and asked him for his name. He was too amazed by her prettiness to resist and told her his name was Oepidus. She seemed happy about what he had done to the old man and told him her name was Kojasta. They decided to go out and get something to eat. On their walk, they saw a wanted sign. On it was a picture of Oepidus, accusing him of the murder of Saul, the old man from the hospital. Oepidus no longer looked anything like his picture, so they shrugged and walked on.
Before long, Oepidus and Kojasta fell in love. They immediately left for Las Vegas, where they could have a romantic drive-through wedding. On the honeymoon, Kojasta became pregnant. 9 months later, she gave birth to strange animal children. They noticed that this was weird, but loved the children anyway. One night, after putting the children to sleep, a model airplane blindsided Kojasta. While she was passed out, she had a flashback to an incident that occurred a long time ago, when she threw her ugly baby boy into a river. She woke up and saw Oepidus standing over her. There was something about his beard that seemed too familiar. She thought about the flashback she had just had. That flashback happened before her 70-year-old husband got sick, and she became a nurse to make sure her husband wouldn't write her out of the will before he died. She told Oepidus her fears about the past, but he told her not to worry. He was raised by a group of salmon in the Detroit River. Suddenly, Kojasta realized the truth, but would not tell Oepidus. She did not want him to expect to get a share of Saul's money.
A few days later, Kojasta and Oepidus heard a knock on the door. They opened the door to find a squad of police on their doorstep. "You are his mother," they said, pointing at Kojasta. No matter how hard she tried to deny it, the truth was apparent. "But how did you know?" Kojasta asked. "We are prophet police. We know Oepidus killed Saul." Oepidus looked around and suddenly had an overwhelming urge to get back to the Detroit River, where he could feel safe. He sprinted out the door and the police and Kojasta followed. He finally reached the river and dove in. Oepidus watched in horror as a group of professional fishermen threw their lines into the water. Remembering his life as a fish, he tried to rescue the endangered animal. The fish pushed Oepidus into the group of hooks, and his eyes got pierced by the hooks. The fishermen pulled him out of the river, proud of their catch. They wanted to keep him as a prize, but Kojasta protested. She got into an argument with the fishermen and was pushed into the river. She could not swim, so she breathed her last breath of fresh Detroit air and capsized into the dark abyss. Out of guilt, the fisherman let Oepidus go. He jumped back into the river, but it was too late to save his beloved wife and mother. He was aware of all the problems he had caused from going on land, and made the decision to never leave the water again. He said his goodbyes to the police and fishermen, knowing that this river, and the city that lies just beyond its shore, were too good for him. He swam away to the Atlantic Ocean to be with his fish family once again, never to return to the greater Detroit area.